Imagine living your normal day. Maybe you a baker, pulling fresh loaves out of the oven, or a gladiator sharpening your sword for the afternoon games. Then in just 24 hours, your entire city disappears forever. Well, in the summer of 79 AD, that's exactly what happened. In the summer of 79 AD, the Roman city of Pompeii thrived with culture, commerce, and everyday life. The locals enjoyed the comforts of a well-planned city, including an aqueduct that brought clean water into town, public baths, and even a public kitchen where free meals were served. But the people of Pompeii also loved to party. Just 2 months before the disaster, thousands of them attended a gladiatorial game in the city's amphitheater. And in the days leading up to the disaster, a festival honoring the goddess Ceres took place in the Forum. While life was good in Pompeii, the people of nearby Naples weren't so lucky. In 62 AD, they experienced an earthquake that destroyed much of the city. But to Pompeians, it was just a minor tremor. People went about their business as usual and started rebuilding Naples. No one in Pompeii seemed concerned by the earthquake, let alone the possibility of a volcanic eruption. That's because Mount Vesuvius, which towers over the modern Italian city of Naples, had been quiet for hundreds of years. And if anyone had asked what was on the other side of the mountain, Pompeians would have told you there was nothing but a small village called Herculaneum and some farmland. The last thing they would have expected was that their quiescent neighbor was actually a volcano, and the sleeping giant had plans to wake up. But before we get to the eruption, let's spend a little more time with the people of Pompeii. The city was home to around 11,000 people, including slaves and foreigners who'd come to work in the city's brothels, taverns, and restaurants. Many of Pompeii's residents were merchants, artisans, and traders who sold imported goods like olive oil, wine, and marble statues. And unlike many Roman cities, Pompeii wasn't just made up of one ethnic group. It was home to Greeks, Jews, and people from Gaul and Africa. All these different cultures lived together in relative harmony, attending parties and sporting events, getting married and raising children. There was no warning for the disaster that struck that day in August. If there had been, though, the people of Pompeii might have heeded it. After all, they had plenty of company. For centuries, the Romans had known about Mount Vesuvius and its smaller neighbor, Mount Sama. And though the locals considered the mountain safe, the Romans had built a military camp on the slopes of Sama just in case. But on that fateful day, the people of Pompeii got no warning. They only had the clothes on their backs and whatever valuables they could grab as they fled for their lives. We know so much about Pompeii not just because of its famous status as a lost city, but because a mountain of ash nearly 200 feet high buried the town. This ash preserved buildings, artwork, even food. And today, it's kept Pompeii safe from looters and weather erosion. Now let's step back and see how it all unfolded. At around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Mount Vesuvius erupted. Hot steam and ash shot through the air and fell onto the nearby city of Stabia, killing many people and burying the city under ash. Those who survived the initial blast barely had time to react before the second eruption at 2 p.m. Pumice stones rained down on Pompeii, covering the rooftops and blanketing the streets in a layer of ash. By 3 p.m., the pyroclastic surge arrived. These are superheated currents of gas and solid matter that race down a volcano's slopes. The current reached Pompeii at 165 miles per hour and temperatures as high as 662 degrees Fahrenheit. Houses were completely destroyed, and non-flammable materials like stone and marble were baked by the heat. The pumice and ash combined with the current to form a thick mud flow that engulfed everything in its path. So far, 1,000 people had died, but some survivors left Pompeii. They probably thought they'd escaped certain death and ran away from the smoking mountain. Unfortunately for them, the worst was yet to come. At 4 p.m., a third eruption hit. Ash rained down for 6 days straight, burying Pompeii under 5 feet of material. In total, the eruptions of Mount Vesuvius killed as many as 16,000 people and buried Pompeii under 20 feet of debris. It would be more than 1,000 years before the name Pompeii became known outside of Italy. During the Middle Ages, locals knew there was a city buried somewhere in the area, but nobody knew its name. Then in 1748, excavations began, and the world learned of Pompeii's existence. The Italian government declared the ruins a protected site and opened them to the public in 1750. And in the decades since, the site has been painstakingly excavated. As of 2023, over 2,000 artifacts have been recovered from Pompeii, including jewelry, bronze, mirrors, and marble statues. Archaeologists have also uncovered mosaics, frescoes, and other artworks that would otherwise be lost to time. Then they've used the city's architecture and layout to learn more about Roman urban planning. But perhaps most fascinating are the human remains found throughout the site. When excavating Pompeii, archaeologists discovered countless skeletons and skulls. For decades, they dug them up, cataloged them, and put them back. But in the 1930s, excavations stopped. Instead of disturbing the skeletons, the Italian government built the site around them. One by one, the excavators filled in the ruins and covered the bones with protective concrete. As of 2023, about 1,000 people remain buried in Pompeii. Some of them were buried beneath roofs, and others were trapped in their final resting places in the Forum. But across the city, there are countless bodies preserved in mite action. Casts have been made of dozens of these bodies, including a dog frozen in fear at its owner's side and a man reaching for help from the top of his roof. Plaster casts have also been made of 2 women and a child who were huddled together in the shadow of a wall. To this day, no one knows who they are, but they've become known as the Embrace of Pompeii. But why does any of this matter? Should we care about a volcanic eruption that happened thousands of years ago? The answer is simple. Pompeii tells us stories that are still relevant today. Sure, it's a tragedy that thousands of people died in the eruption. Yes, it's fascinating to learn about life in ancient Rome. But the story of Pompeii is ultimately about ordinary people living their everyday lives. Life in Pompeii would have seemed very different to someone living today. The buildings were made of stone and wood, the streets were bumpy and dirty, and everyone shared water and sewage systems. While Pompeii thrived, slaves did most of the work. And though Pompeians had access to free bread, many people struggled to survive. Still, life in Pompeii would have been recognizable to many people today. The men and women of Pompeii planned their days around the rising and setting of the sun. They visited friends, argued with neighbors, and did their best to build a better life for themselves and their families. Fortunately, they didn't get the chance to finish their stories. But thanks to their frozen-in-time city, their stories can live on. Thanks for watching. If this real story moved you, make sure to subscribe for more truth-driven history. What would you have done in those final hours? Comment your thoughts below.